banks. We've nationalised the banks in order to keep them going. What I say is when we set them off, we pull this off them, and we keep this, and we do this globally, so that I can go into China and take money out of a cash point there, or pay dollars or euros into a bank in Afghanistan, and it will credit my account in the UK. There is no technological reason for this not happening now. Absolutely none. All in real time. And banks can come and go as they please. If they fail because they can't cut the mustard, like we said to the miners, you've got to reskill, the days of mining with coal are over, bye-bye. We can say that to banks as well. If we take the key issues of infrastructure off them that allow us to operate as a country without fear of them suddenly disappearing overnight. We can just let them go. You want to do deposits, you want to do all your investment banking, you want to do all the rest of the stuff that the banks offer, fine, let them do it. But we take clearing, settlements, payments off them. Because they've shown themselves for what they're really like. The amount of mess we are in now because of this. And I say, MENA, what a great place to try it out. Starting from scratch, new technology going in. Don't copy what we've done. We're going to give you a new infrastructure, and we're going to see how it interrelates between these countries, because they still have different sovereign currencies at the current at this moment in time. No reason. One of the things I campaigned for a couple of decades ago was for the ICU, the Islamic currency unit. I was trying to get those people on board for a single currency because I worked on the euro. Coming back, how am I doing for time?
No, that's fine. You've got 10 minutes.
I've got 10 minutes. Really? It seems like I've already done it now. I'll move swiftly on to ROMA, Recovery of Funds. As I put in the document, if anybody's had time to read it, I've tried to explain to people the swiftness in which things have gone on with Libya and the seizing of Libyan assets. On the 23rd of February, the US Treasury made an announcement that they were considering the possibility of financial sanctions against Libya. They were considering the possibility. On Sunday, the 27th of February, 4 days later, the United Nations passed sanctions unanimously. Unanimous vote. Within 4 days of going for considering the possibility, the vote was through. On Monday, the 28th, the US Treasury, Barack Obama, announced that the US Treasury had already managed to locate more than $30 billion of Libyan assets that were held in complex structures, that were held in collateralized accounts and all sorts of weird special purpose vehicles, that it became necessary for the banks to actually corroborate. Now, this is something that the banks very rarely do. To sit down and say, well, you know, we've got this money from you in this trust fund, and then they turn around and say, well, actually, that trust fund is actually owned by this Cayman Isles company over there, and that Cayman Isles company over there has got a shareholder over here. This is very rare. The idea is, of the fiscal Guantanamo Bay, is that we put it through various levels so that it becomes very difficult and obscure to trace it back. They work together. In one day, to find more than $34 billion worth of assets. Pull the other one, it's got bells on. Now, Barack Obama actually issued an executive presidential order on Friday the 25th. So he gave the Americans 2 days head start. They got to work Saturday and Sunday before the UN resolution to seize the money on Monday the 28th. Impossible. That type of activity within inside of the banks would take months. Ordinarily. The only country I actually know about, Lord Nazir, is Iran. I'm aware that Iranian holdings in most Western banks are on a special spreadsheet, and we can go, it's absolutely true. I've got a friend of mine who's a manager of another bank that I can't name, that was asked to put this together out in Dubai several years ago. Every one of the accounts that's got an Iranian passport holder, they've done the due diligence of finding out how long. They've got a single button they can press and just freeze it all overnight. By the way, back in the day when, as Lord Reserves pointed out, the 15 billion, as it was in 1979 money of overseas Iranian money was seized. That money has never ever been returned to Iran. If somebody seized $15 billion of mine, I think I'd call him a great Satan too. That's just my personal opinion. So we have a situation where the United States had been planning for months to seize these Libyan assets. The total amount, within the end of that week, $67 billion under the LIA, the Libyan Investment Authority, managed through the UK, had been seized. Around the rest of the world, another 50 billion, 150 billion of Libyan cash has been seized. Add on to that funds which, it's controversial, so I'm not going to say how, but they've ended up with the overseas Libyan funds, sorry, the overseas Tunisian funds and the overseas Egyptian funds that were moved out of the City of London, nearly 50 billion. People tried to, when I mentioned this number at the Egyptian-British Chambers of Commerce the other day, people were mocking me and saying, there's no way that Hosni Mubarak had that kind of money. Egypt's a poor country. I was asked by a very senior person inside of Saudi to try and help in the battle between a man called Suarez of Egypt, who was the owner of Orascom, and a battle that he was actually having in Algeria at that time with the president over being able to sell a company, a mobile phone company that he set up there. So I got to see the inside track on the paperwork, most of which I'm not going to disclose. But it's an open fact that Vimpelcom, the Russian mobile company, bought Orascom for $20 billion. That transaction did not clear in Egypt, but the $20 billion went from place A to place B. And the fact of the matter is, there's a large number of Egyptian assets that are worth way beyond that. Mr. Suarez, incidentally, is also Coptic Christian. He's the richest man in Africa, by all accounts. So if anybody tries to say that the Christians were oppressed under Mubarak and the Copts never got anywhere and they never got a look in, they actually did far better financially. And my source's fear of things going in a reversal, he has a great deal of influence even now over generals in the Egyptian army because of the amount of money that he's got out there. But he's not actually a bad guy, so I don't think he would initiate anything like that, but he's certainly somebody who could do that. Egypt has a tremendous amount of money because of a sudden sickness, a sickness which is shared by Hosni Mubarak and Ben Ali. They both suffer from the same sickness at the moment. As a result of that, their assets have been frozen, effectively, some of the legal Guantanamo Bay. In fact, if you study the press, you'll see that both men mysteriously went into comas within 7 days of leaving with their money. That's interesting. So, in total, the United States now has managed to get its hands on $300 billion. That's a total coincidence that this year $1.8 trillion of United States national debt is maturing, that the Chinese, the South Koreans, the Japanese, the Saudis and the Abu Dhabi mob, as I like to call them, all stopped attending the auctions for the last 9 months. I predicted 9 months ago that the United States was on road to default on their AAA sovereign status. They're not now because they're able to pay off the maturing debt with seized assets. I'll finish that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mohammed.
I want to go back to 1991 when I used to work for Lehman Brothers and I used to be a repo trader. 1989, the American government was bust. It's been bust ever since, but particularly at that time, most of its money used to come from Japan, because Japan used to bail them out every night. But after the Wall Street crash in '87, they stopped bailing out Wall Street overnight. The only people who were bailing out Wall Street after the '87 crash was Saudi Arabia, and till today. I used to sit on that desk at 11 in the night, and US would go out with a repo program for billions and billions, In 89, a billion was a lot of money. Today, trillion, it doesn't mean anything. A billion doesn't mean anything. Today, they're out trying to raise trillions overnight. Every night, there used to be a book entry between Saudi and the American government where they would balance the books. And that's called a repurchase program. You buy it in the night, you sell it back in the day. Suddenly, we have Saddam Hussein, who walks into a little village which the Americans don't even know where that exists, called Kuwait. And suddenly Saddam turns his guns on Saudi and says, I'm walking to the central bank of Sana'a. All hell breaks loose. So we sit here and we talk about, you know, something amazing happening in the Middle East. What's going to be next? America will go and save anybody as long as their interest is met. I spent 15 years on greed. 15 years losing money, making money, and I left that in 1995. Since 1995, I've been involved in state privatization, which is another sick sector, in Russia, Eastern Europe, where after all these governments fell, the Goldman Sachs of the world bought assets from these state enterprises for peanuts and resold them with a great amount of profits. And that is capitalism. So, come back to me now, and what are we going to see today? We're not going to see anything different. We can sit here, quantify all kinds of things, but let's get back to the facts. Let's look at past revolutions. We have over 40 revolutions in the last 30 years. All of them are failed states. Nobody has succeeded. We still have tyranny, we still have a mafia regime, we have dynastic rule, we have autocratic rule, we have the same old thing. What is different now? Nothing. I take 4 countries, which is probably the world's largest, richest today,